Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Psst, You're an Advocate Too session. You can interact and ask questions via the chat function and Q&A. Please remember that all of our sessions are meant to be informational, and any treatment decisions should be made with your healthcare team. So, Chris, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Mike and Claire. Hi, folks. I'm Chris Bordoni. I'm joining from Northern Virginia outside Washington, D.C., and I'm a testicular cancer survivor. So I was diagnosed with stage 3B testicular cancer when I was 30 years old. I recently just celebrated my 5-year cancer-free anniversary, which I'm super excited about. And today I'm very excited about this conversation. We have an amazing group of panelists, and we're going to talk about advocacy. We're going to talk about how folks got involved in advocacy, what it means, some of the best and maybe most challenging parts of being an advocate. And then for all of you who are thinking about what does it mean, maybe there's a small thing you could do, or maybe you have big ambitions, we're going to talk about how do you get started? Where can you go from here? So to kick things off, I would love to do some introductions with our panelists here. I'd love to hear from folks, obviously your name, where you live, your connection to cancer, and then what type of advocacy you're engaged in today. So Dorothy, do you mind kicking us off here?
Not at all. Thanks, Chris, and congratulations. My name is Dorothy Paredes. I'm in the Southern Oregon area. I live in Jacksonville, Oregon. I am a 3-time cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 26 in 2005, ovarian cancer when I was 36 in 2014, and again with ovarian cancer when I was 38 in 2018. And I am here to advocate not only for something that really hit home for me from Chris's session on self-advocacy, but also to be a community and a peer advocate for those of us in the community who are finding their voice, who need a voice, and who we all know we really need to drive some change at our mental health and wellness and how we approach that in oncology care.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dorothy. Ryan, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from today. Happy Saturday. I'm Ryan Mcdonald. I'm the Associate Editorial Director for Cure, as you can see here on my lovely jacket. I'm coming to you from just outside of Philadelphia, a suburb near the airport. My connection to cancer outside of the Cure community and what we do and provide for everyone is I lost 3 of 4 of my grandparents to cancer, 2 of which I never had the chance to meet because of cancer. So, cancer, although I'm not personally connected to it myself or my journey, I have had several family members, lose or die from this disease. And part of the advocacy we're a part of is pretty much just providing patients, survivors, caregivers, loved ones, advocates as well, kind of an opportunity to not only share their story, but connect with others in the cancer community.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ryan. Heidi?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heidi Nafmanda. I was diagnosed with stage 3A lung cancer 3 years ago without any known risk factors and became involved in advocacy little by little. And now it's quite loud. I'm the co-founder of the White Ribbon Project, and we are working on changing the public perception of lung cancer by increasing lung cancer awareness.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heidi. And Pierre?
Yes, well, I'm Heidi's husband. I'm a recently retired primary care physician, and my goal is really to become a stronger advocate, for the lung cancer community as Heidi has become, and others, and particularly with a focus on lung cancer screening and having other primary care physicians participate in lung cancer advocacy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pierre. And like I said before, I think it's a fantastic group of folks, and I'm looking forward to diving in here. I want to start by talking a little bit about advocacy and how you all got involved. So you're all doing amazing things now. I want to go back and talk about where things started. So when I think about myself, I think of myself as sort of a reluctant and perhaps accidental advocate. So in hindsight, I think my experiences started out really small. And in fact, right after I was diagnosed and then sort of on the other side of things, I really just wanted to start getting on with my life. I didn't really want to think about cancer at all. But then I started having some small interactions where maybe a friend or a family member was going through something challenging, and so I started having conversations with them. My doctor would reach out and say, hey, I've got a patient who's having a hard time. Would you mind speaking to him or her? And then I got asked to write a blog post. And then I started a podcast and started interviewing folks, and then started writing, and sort of one thing led to another. And I find myself now in a position where I'm doing things that sort of look and feel like advocacy, but it certainly didn't start out that way. So I'm curious to go to a few of you and just talk about where things started and how you started down the path of becoming an advocate. And Heidi, I think you're probably a great person to start with here. I'd love to hear from you about how did you get to that place where you ultimately started the White Ribbon Project?
So initially, when I was diagnosed 3 years ago, my head was spinning. Again, I had no known risk factors. I didn't even have any symptoms. So a good part of those first few months were just processing the diagnosis, given a terrible prognosis, trying to learn more about lung cancer. And I leaned on Pierre a lot for that. And I was pretty quiet about my diagnosis. I mean, my small circle of friends and family knew, but I certainly wasn't on social media. And then when I started to learn more about lung cancer and how, just people are, there's so many facts people don't know. And being a health educator, married to primary care, being trained in prevention, both of us, we thought, wow, it's not really responsible to stay quiet. So we became involved in advocacy initially through some of the larger advocacy organizations like GoTo and Longevity, and did some fundraising and, got some training on how to, go to Capitol Hill virtually and lobby for more money and so forth. And then about a year ago, through this and starting to become more comfortable talking about it, started to engage our cancer centers prior to Lung Cancer Awareness Month, which is November. Not only me, but other advocates across the country, and finding out that they basically had no plan to do anything just sparked my temper. And I, was very hurt and frustrated. Asked Pierre to make me a big white ribbon for our front door made out of wood, something that would be sustainable for years to come, and scream to the world that I had lung cancer, my world meaning my own immediate community. I didn't have to ask permission to do this from cancer centers or anything. And it went viral. And here we are today. Now our ribbons are in 26 countries, 45 states, 70 cancer centers. We just keep growing every single day. So what started as just a knee-jerk reaction that was mounting from other pieces of advocacy that I had been involved with now has exploded to a movement. And I'm so grateful for everyone involved.
I love you. I love that. And congratulations. I love you too. But I think I love the story, and I think that's wonderful. Dorothy, I want to go to you, and I want to talk a little bit about your experience. How did your advocacy journey start to unfold?
My advocacy journey started to unfold when I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 26. In 2005, there weren't many young cancer survivors, and it's sad to say that now because I see more and more. I feel like the numbers just grow and grow, and it's heartbreaking to see that. But when I was going through my experience, I knew that I wanted to write. Social media wasn't as big as an outlet as it is now at that time. So for me, it was writing, and it was writing a book and getting my story out there to help people understand that there is another side of cancer that impacts us, and it's those really, really hard life decisions that push us almost to a breaking point. It pushes us to an edge. Those aren't talked about. When you're going through a cancer diagnosis, it's almost easy to get treatment. Somebody tells you where to go, where to be, when to be there, what's going to happen to you. But nobody talks to you about those really, really super hard decisions that you're going to have to make around your fertility. Something that Chris, I'm coming back to Chris a couple times, but something that Chris said, the decisions on your life, what's going to happen. And I know when I walked away from my experience, I was depressed, I was angry, I had to start all over again. I didn't know where I was going to start. So my advocacy really started with talking, telling people volunteering with different organizations where I used to live in Austin, Texas, and just really starting to get that story out there. So I recently published my book on that, and then I also started a nonprofit to help with another aspect that also isn't really talked about very much, which is the financial impact of thriving and surviving through cancer. The Atrium Foundation, in a nutshell, we pay for people's bills who have been impacted by cancer, whether that is a cancer survivor or a caregiver, because caregivers are also a huge gap in our focus, I feel like, in oncology care. They carry a lot of weight for us, and what we want to do is help alleviate some of that stress and really bring that forward, that there needs to be more help there, and there needs to be more help for our mental health and wellness, because that is a huge part of us thriving through our journey of survivorship.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ryan, you talked a little bit about about your connection to cancer and your family history. Tell me about what led you to this specific role at Cure, and then I'd love to hear a little bit more about the work that Cure does and the ways that you all are supporting the community.
Yeah, so kind of what led me to my role in Cure right now, not to get too much in the weeds in the background, but I used to work for another, healthcare company in terms of writing and providing news for healthcare providers. And then this opportunity kind of came into my lap with Cure and kind of working with patients and the survivors, caregivers, and advocates aspect of things. And it really intrigued my personal interest because of not only my connections to cancer, but kind of wanting to connect with more patients and kind of provide them this opportunity to share their stories and kind of help them through their cancer continuum. You start from diagnosis to treatment and survivorship. So that's kind of what interested me in joining Cure. And then kind of what we do here at Cure is pretty much like I was just saying, we provide as much information as possible that's accurate, it's researched, it's detailed to help individuals through their treatment or help them through their survivorship. One thing, Dorothy, you mentioned like financial aspects or quality of life, life after cancer. We have special sections on our website to talk about the financials or diet and exercise or even psychosocial, because there's a lot of mental health discussions that don't happen around cancer that we try and put as much information as possible. And also we allow for individuals to share their story with Cure. So we have a section on the website that you can submit your story. And it's kind of an avenue for people to connect with their peers and to kind of create this community almost. And I encourage all of you who are joining to shoot me a message, shoot me an email. If you want in the chat, I can give you my personal email, and you'll feel free to connect. We want to share your story, and we want to give you an opportunity to be able to reach out to all of your peers and kind of, feel like you have a community within a community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Ryan. And for folks who are listening right now and might be interested in learning more, are you able to type the link in the chat just so folks can check out the Cure website?
Of course.
Wonderful. And Pierre, I want to come to you. So you have a different perspective here as both a caregiver and a former physician. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, I guess, why advocacy is important to you. And certainly I think I know half of the story here, but tell me more about sort of what your journey into advocacy looked like.
Well, initially I was struggling to see how I could best support Heidi through her cancer journey, and then also trying to figure out how I could fit into her increasing sort of movement towards advocacy. And I was fortunate enough to meet Chris Draft, who is a longtime lung cancer advocate. His wife passed away of lung cancer about 10 years ago. And he was the one who said, even though you don't have cancer, you're a caregiver, you're a primary care physician, you have a skill set that can be perhaps uniquely applied to advocacy. And so I think it was mainly learning through observing other advocates, particularly other people who were not directly affected by lung cancer. They didn't have lung cancer themselves, but they were either caregivers or someone like myself who had opportunities and a voice that perhaps could reach a different audience. So that for me, I think led me to sort of look into how can I become an advocate and leverage some of the skill sets I have, the fund of knowledge, and perhaps the reach. And so for me, it's trying to connect with other physicians and healthcare delivery systems to sort of see how can we partner with them and become advocates.
Pierre, I want to stay with you for a moment. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So I'm curious. So you've seen the inside of the system. You're a primary care physician, and now you've spent a lot of time as an advocate. What's sort of your perspective on where the opportunities are, or perhaps things that maybe could work a little bit differently, or perhaps even things that you wish you'd done differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as physicians and other healthcare providers, nurses, respiratory therapists, anyone who's in the healthcare system, you focus in on how can I best help my patients, given the skill set that I have. I think what I've learned is that you can also become advocates for your patients in different ways, and because the voice, I think, of people who work in healthcare carries a great deal of influence. You are seen as experts in a certain field, and therefore you might have more influence in terms of reaching the media, in terms of reaching legislators. And so I think that was my big learning is, yes, you can care for and treat your patients in the setting, but you can also become more effective advocates for them as well, should you desire to.
That's wonderful. What I love about this conversation and all of your stories is that there's so many different ways that you can get involved, right? And they can change over time. There's no, sadly, right, in some respects, there's no shortage of opportunities to step in and to help out. And I think what's so encouraging, so inspiring about this is that it's about really figuring out if and when you're ready to do something, and then figuring out what's a tiny step that you can make, right? There's no pressure. There's so many ways that we can all be helpful. And so I appreciate all of you sharing a little bit about how you got started, and then certainly the work that you're doing now. I want to talk about a different perspective here, which is actually around fear, right? And so I think about my own experiences. When I first started telling my story, I was a little bit afraid. I was afraid about telling the world, hey, I had cancer, and I'm young, and my cancer might come back. And I know statistically that certain parts of my life might look different, right? And I was worried about what impact it might have, particularly in the job market, that if someone would look at the things I'd said publicly and say, you know what, we're going to play it safe here, and we're going to go with this other person. That concerned me as a professional. And I think what was really helpful for me is I had actually interviewed a woman many years prior who had been very upfront about her journey with cancer. And she owned it. And she said, you know, this is me. This is part of who I am. This has changed my life in some good ways and some bad ways. And that was really powerful to me, right? I'm sure everyone has a different reaction to that. But for me, that showed me something different about her. And I said, you know what, I kind of want to be that person. I know that this creates some risk, but I think it maybe creates some other benefits, and I'm okay with it. I can make peace with it. I'm curious to hear from some of you about, you know, were there fears or obstacles that you faced as you started down this path? Dorothy, I see you smiling. I'd love to hear a little bit from you about this.
Yeah, can you hear me? I just wanted to
Yes.
make sure. Okay, great. I mean, everything you were saying is hitting home. I think I had not known anybody with cancer other than, you know, my grandmother who was really old, and I think that's what we saw as the face for a very long time of cancer. It's something that I think I've said before. It's kind of like a billboard, right? You know it's around, you know it's there, but it's always kind of out of reach, out of touch, and it's somebody else. And then when it impacts you or somebody super close to you, you're like, oh, you know, this is real. And I was afraid. I was afraid to go to work. I was afraid to tell people. I know when I was first diagnosed with breast cancer, I don't think I told even my parents for like a week, you know, because I didn't know how they were going to take it and how it was going to impact them. And the way that my family would handle it. And it wasn't as in I was afraid that they would not be there for me. It was just I wasn't ready to give them that fear as well and hand over that pain to them as well, you know. And the same that you were saying with work, I think it took me a long time to be voiceful on social media about what I was doing because I was afraid I was going to get judged. I was afraid that employers could say that I'm picking a side or not picking a side, or I'm giving too much focus and effort to my passion. And so it took a lot for me to use your word exactly, to really own it and be okay with putting it out there. And now I feel like there's a weight lifted, so to speak. It's very valuable to me. It's also very healing for me. So I know, I don't know about all of you, but I know that I've thought about this several times, that sometimes this journey is a bit selfish also. It helps me heal. It helps me and helps my family heal. But I know that I'm also doing this to help other people move through their journey, to help other people know that they aren't alone, that we should be, walking around and not afraid to be this part of who we are now in this moment. And that could be with no hair, that could be with no eyebrows, This is who we are, this is a stage in our life, and you know what? We're going to move past it and we're going to go into the next stage. But it is frightening, and it takes a person to be in the right moment to be able to get out and do that. And it's a process. So I think one thing that I don't want anybody to feel like today is I should be doing more, or I shouldn't be doing more, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. We all have our own journey to walk through, and we all have our own process to navigate, and you will do those things when you're ready. And people showing up here today and showing up at this conference throughout the last couple of days is that community, and it is us all advocating for each other.
I think that's very well said. I want to ask you all about some of your most memorable moments. So on the other side of this, has anyone had moments where you said, this is amazing. Like, I really feel like I'm having an impact. I feel like I'm doing some good in the world. This feels worth putting myself out there, taking the risk, doing those sorts of things. I'm curious if anyone has moments that they really are proud of or just felt really good.
Yeah, when I first put this picture of this ribbon and the whole scene of my house on this private Facebook page for lung cancer advocates in Colorado, survivors, there were only about 30 people on there. And that, I said, we can do something on our own. Go ahead, tie a ribbon around your own tree or mailbox. And then they're, pointing out, well, what's that thing on your door? And, I told them my husband made this and they wanted it. And I thought, okay, that screams I have lung cancer, or I love someone who has lung cancer. So maybe we're onto something, because why would they want something that's 2 feet high, 1 foot wide, if they were ashamed of having this disease? And so I started to think we could be onto something. We got those ribbons to people by leaving them on our front porch initially, and they would come pick them up. And then what they started to do on their own with it, that's when I knew this thing had legs. They would put pictures of themselves on social media with the ribbon in front of their cancer centers or with their doctors. And I thought, not one person looks ashamed to say they have lung cancer. And now they put it out there on social media. So could this be the thing, the piece that's been missing to help this community rise and advocate for themselves, for their communities, bring people together, let them know they're never alone? And, and then working with Chris Draft has just been amazing, because he's this amazing connector, and he's like, okay, this is something, that we can, keep moving forward with, and got us connected via Zoom meetings across the country with advocates. And you were talking to people that you probably never would have met had we not been in this situation of having to use, like the Zoom platform. And then he had connections to the medical community and hospital administrators, and boom, it's just been an amazing collaboration of mega advocates, where I and Pierre were lucky enough to have the connection to him. And then he connected us to other amazing people like Dave Bjork here. And we have many other people helping us in other facets of this to grow this. We're, an organization. There he is.
That's great. And what I love about that is the idea that if you get started, there's other people who will meet you in the middle, right? There are people who've been in this space. Many of them are on this call or in the audience or organizing this conference who are doing amazing things and have lots of ideas about how to solve problems and how to have more impact and all that sort of stuff. And so if you take a step, people will meet you in the middle. I think that's a really wonderful part. And it helps when things feel intimidating or it feels like, can I possibly make a difference? Well, I think what I'm hearing from you, Heidi, is absolutely, and other people will help you to get there.
Correct. That there is a spectrum of advocacy, from I want, in our particular situation, I want a ribbon. I want to start a conversation about this, to people who are on the far end with going to, feeling comfortable approaching a cancer center director or going to Capitol Hill, or in the science niche of this, really learning that and learning how to, help people advocate for themselves and their medical care. It all matters. It's all meaningful. Or pressing the share button on a great social media post that you see and trying to get it out more to general public.
Yeah. Ryan, can you talk about from your perspective in your work, are there moments where this all feels really fantastic? It feels really worthwhile. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's like you said, this cancer journey for everyone is different. Some people may have the wherewithal to say, all right, I'm going to be an advocate for myself immediately. And some people are, fearful and rightfully so. You never know who's going to judge you, how they're going to judge you. So in my almost 2 years now with the brand, I've talked to countless, hundreds, patients, survivors, caregivers, what have you, about this. And it kind of continues to reiterate to me that, what I'm doing and what Cure does matters. We provide information, education on some of the newest treatment advances and some developments going on in a specific space: lung cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer. It could be any cancer, but in particular too, it's just providing people with an avenue to just share what's going on with them. So I think in doing what I've done and the team as well that we have at Cure, what we do matters, and it makes me feel like I'm doing something to help the community with whatever they're going through, whether it's, as Dorothy mentioned, the fear. We've talked to people about that fear and overcoming that, and talking to not just, friends and family, but children. We've talked to, specialists who provide information on how to break the news to your children and how to do it best so that they can perhaps become a part of your journey and influence your treatment decisions. What do they want to know about what's going on with you? So it just makes me feel happy to know that, working with as many people as I have, over the past 2 years, it's provided me with a sense of, okay, maybe someone who comes to our website or who reads our magazine, whether they share it or not, maybe they're getting something to help them through their journey.
Yeah. Dorothy, Pierre, any moments for you that really stand out as being worthwhile or just making it feel like you're having an impact? Yeah, Dorothy, go ahead.
Yeah. So I feel like there are a lot of moments. I think one moment that I have had, and I'm going to start with some of the most, I think, individual moments I've had is when I've talked to somebody at the oncology center, or I've talked to somebody at work, or I've talked to somebody, for example, we went to a wine tasting and we started talking about life and everything with the people around us. And some of the most rewarding moments I've had is when that other person has said, I have had cancer, or I know someone who has had cancer, and I could really tell that sharing that moment with them was meaningful, was valuable, and we were able to walk away with a hug. That is absolutely, I think, some of the most valuable, most rewarding times I've had. I think with my book, it's been super valuable because I have seen that it's really helped people connect to a story that they can share in, that they can understand the trauma, maybe not in the specific decisions that I had to make in my experience, but in decisions that they had to make in their own and how it impacted them. I think especially in trying to be as truthful and as vulnerable as I could be with my, my depression, my outlets to handling that. really helped also other people who may not have had trauma from cancer know that they weren't alone in these experiences, and there's no right way or wrong way to handle something. We handle it the best way that we can, when we can, and hopefully we can navigate through that and come out in a better place. So sharing my story and allowing myself, because I really had to allow myself to put that story out there, and like Ryan and like Chris, you have said, I had to be willing to take the judgment, and I had to be ready to hear the criticisms or hear people be disappointed or, question. It was super hard, but it was very valuable in knowing that even if it was only a couple of people that reached out and said, this story really touched me, it really helped me, I know that I'm not alone, that is absolutely also one of the most powerful moments that I've had. And then I think third, in the foundation, in my organization, the Atrium Foundation, something that we do when we are meeting with our potential beneficiaries is that we actually meet with them through Zoom. Unfortunately, it's not person to person. It is through Zoom. And they have taken a lot of pride in the fact that we are there to help them, that there is somebody there who will listen to them. So even though it's meant to be kind of an interview, because there has to be a way that we vet that somebody needs the help, the person having 30 minutes to an hour to talk to us about their experience, about what they're going through, or about what their child has gone through, has been very rewarding. It's been so unplanned and unintentional, but I think something that I've heard from them is that they will ask for help from other organizations, and it's a paper application, and they'll get an email back, and it's a really nice email, but there's no face-to-face, And I think really having that face-to-face with people while we're trying to provide support and build a community is super important and very rewarding to meet with them, hear their stories, and give them a chance to get some of that feeling, off of their chest. So it's been a blessing to really be able to be more embedded in the community and really provide help where we can.
That's wonderful. I want to touch on something here with the broader group that you brought up, Dorothy, which is, you talked a little bit about essentially protecting yourself. Sometimes you put yourself out there and you don't know what you're going to get back, or maybe you get something back that's not what you're looking for, or maybe it's about setting boundaries. I'm curious to speak with this group about, as you put yourself out there and as you share more, you share your story, you're vulnerable, right? You tell things oftentimes that are challenging, can be challenging to talk about. I want to talk about, how do you take care of yourself, right? How do you make sure that you're able to, show up and be okay, right? And not go too far with things. And actually, Ryan, I'm curious to start with you on this, because you spend a lot of time talking to folks and hearing their stories. I imagine that sometimes that's a lot. Talk to me about, how do you take care of your well-being?
Yes, that's one of the interesting topics, if you will, because when you think of cancer, many people just say, I just want to get through treatment. I want to get out on the other side and survive. I want to be in those survivorship years. But taking care of yourself is really important, because you need to know, when you're at your wit's end, so to speak, and you need help from someone, whether it's speaking to a therapist or, working with your caregiver to really get those avenues to help you kind of get through those tough days. And one thing too, talking about caregivers, a lot of people don't think of the caregiver and that person having, their struggles and what they're going through and how they need to take care of themselves as well. Because if they don't take care of themselves, they might not be able to be there for their significant other or family member, whether it's a parent or child going through, their cancer treatment. So one thing we like to do is kind of, reach out to those specialists, those people who can kind of give their advice on how to best take care of yourself, whether it's with sleep health, whether it's meditation, eating better. So it's one thing that we've talked with countless experts on, and kind of like you said, Chris, and everybody here on the listening or talking on the panel, talking with people on kind of their best practices that they do to take care of themselves. One thing could be art therapy. One thing, Cure has done in the past is we've had a poetry contest this past year to open up the door to anyone who was interested in sharing a poem, because we know that's been, cathartic to people and then help them get through. So we do a lot of things like that, and we hope that people come to us for information on how to take care of themselves during their journey.
Yeah. Pierre, I'm going to come to you here in a moment. I just want to say as well, if folks who are listening and you have questions, we're going to keep going here as a panel. But if you have questions, things you'd like to build on, things you'd like to clarify, things you'd like to share, please do that in the chat. We'd love to take some questions here in a moment or as we go. Pierre, let me come to you. So as a primary care physician, right, you spend a lot of time with patients, sometimes I imagine, who are coming in for regular checkups and sometimes who are going through difficult things already. And this is part of the job as a physician. Now you're in a different role, right, where you're spending a lot of time in this world, and there can be some difficult topics. It can be challenging, it can be frustrating, it can be uncertain, it can be ambiguous. Talk to me about, are there certain strategies or things you've found that are helpful to protect yourself and to make sure that you're able to keep doing the work, but in a way that it's not taking more from you than you're able to give?
Yeah, I think that applies to anyone, right, regardless of whether or not you're involved in advocacy work. But I think it's trying to be honest with myself. What is it that I truly need for balance, and giving myself the permission to work in lung cancer advocacy in a manner that I think provides me that balance. I'm fine if someone wants to devote 100% of their time in advocacy or whatever they want to do. But I also think everyone should be allowed, as we're all saying, to, if you're going to get involved in advocacy, to allow you to work it into your life in a manner that's sustainable. And that's just being honest with yourself. So I have a lot of other interests, and I try to make time for that. And certainly having the support of Heidi helps me with that. And I hope I offer her the same flexibility.
That's wonderful. Is anyone just curious? Yeah, Heidi, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's, we're at a point now where we're really immersed in this, and that's a challenge to find that balance. And, the support from Pierre is very, very helpful. And he seems to be a little bit better about juggling this and making some boundaries than I do. And, I'm fortunate in the sense that my day job is, I'm a trainer, and so I do exercise, and I'm forced to do it because it's part of my job. But other than that, I'm struggling with more self-care issues, drawing those boundaries myself. I'll get an email or something that something needs to be done. And in my head, it needs to be done immediately, to get back to someone, so they're not feeling that they're, being ignored or whatever. So I am struggling with that. And Pierre's a great role model, and as a couple, we're working on it.
I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. I think just saying, hey, sometimes I struggle with this, or I'm stepping into a place where it's hard, I think is the first step, right? And there aren't always easy answers, but I think if you can name it, it does become easier, particularly if you have people that are supporting you, to start to say, okay, is there a way to draw some boundaries or figure out how to rethink this in a way where it becomes more sustainable? So I appreciate you sharing that, Heidi. I want to switch gears here, and I want to talk about sort of one last thing, which is around, for folks who are listening and maybe they're feeling a little bit inspired, or maybe they're already doing great work and want to think about, how do I do more of it? How do I take it to the next level? I'd love to hear from each of you about what are some thoughts of yours on how people can start becoming an advocate or expand the role or the impact of their advocacy. What are some things that you've learned and you might share with someone who's curious? Ryan, why don't we start with you, if that's okay? I think certainly Cure has many ways that folks can get engaged. So why don't we start here, and then we can go and hear from the other folks.
Yes. So as I kind of shared in the chat earlier, I shared my email with everyone. So feel free to message me, whether it's you want to share your story, or in fact, you have an organization that you work with and you don't think enough word is getting out to the public, we'd love to profile that organization. We'd love to give people that information to see what's out there. Because as everyone knows, there's countless organizations and they offer countless amounts of help. So we also have, in fact, a strategic alliance partnership page where we connect and partner with advocacy organizations. And we've partnered with, I think, more than 6 dozen or so over the last several years to kind of provide their mission and how it goes with that. But, you know, one thing I've talked with people over the past and experienced and talked with them is, you know, move at your pace and go with how you feel comfortable, you know, getting out there. So if you're ready to say, okay, I'm going to message my legislators, or I'm going to, you know, work with someone who I know has an organization, talk to them how to get involved and say, oh, you did this, you know, how do you think I should do it? And what are some ways that I can kind of get my feet wet in this organization, because I've never done it before. So my advice too with that would be talk with someone who's done it. Reach out to Heidi, reach out to Dorothy and Pierre and say, how did you do this? And can you please give me some advice on how to, you know, start something? Because, you know, I know for myself outside of this, starting anything is scary. You know, you're afraid of failing and it's okay to fail or feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but, you know, it's always good to get that help from someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Dorothy, what about you? What advice or what thoughts might you have for someone who's thinking about dipping their toe in or doing a bit more?
Yeah. Kind of, you know, the same as Ryan. Start small. It can be intimidating at first. It really can be. Even though we have as much you know, good intention. We really want to get out there. We're ready to tell our story. Start small, because it is a lot to take on. We always have to keep in mind our mental health and wellness. The way that I started was I looked at some local organizations in my community. I used to live in Austin, Texas. It's where I was born and raised. I think I saw somebody here who's in Austin, so yay. But look locally, you know, or even start with your own oncology center, right? Go to some support groups. Tell your story there. See if they need some help with people who can help get in the community or be an advocate. Or a lot of oncology centers and local organizations have ways that you can go to groups or be partnered with other people that you can talk with directly, kind of not like an advocate, but more like a friend, you know, somebody that you can relate to. Other things, though, I think once you start branching out and really getting that feel for it and really assessing if being an advocate is something for you, right? This may not be something for everybody. Maybe it's something else. So being an advocate, yes, is great, but make sure that it's something for you, something that fits with your personality, something that fits with your family dynamic, what you're doing right now with your career. You know, don't pile too much on yourself, but if you're really starting to do that, there are a lot of organizations who have volunteer postings, advocacy postings for getting out and speaking with legislatures, doing testimonies. If there's anything in your state that has a bill coming up that could affect you, you could do things like that and still work locally. But other than that, just you know, look at the resources that you go to, see if any of them are wanting advocacy help, or just reach out. And a lot of times, a lot of organizations don't know what they need until it's presented to them as well. So if you have something that you're really passionate about, present it to somebody, and I'm sure the community will pick up and hear it. And I think my last thought really is social media. I know we all have good and questioning and maybe some bad thoughts about social media, because it can go various ways depending on what it's about. But I really, really have found the social media community on Instagram, the cancer community on Instagram, to be very strong. They share a lot of good information, a lot of good content there's a lot of good organizations that you can find there. And a lot of times they're looking for people to collaborate, to kind of share their story or a picture, or be a guest blog person or on a podcast. So you can still do things like that where you're telling your story, you're writing, you're helping yourself, you're helping the community, but it may not be so upfront and in your face and having to get out and speak. So look at social media also. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Dorothy. Pierre, what might you add to this conversation? Pierre, I think you might still be on mute.
Yeah, I apologize. I agree that there are amazing benefits to leveraging social media. But I'm very uncomfortable with it. And so it's for me trying to find that balance of how can I participate in a way that I'm comfortable in, and not create problems for Heidi, which I think can sometimes occur if I'm worried that I'm going to say something or do something that perhaps might be counterproductive. But what I'm learning is that there's much more potential benefits to leveraging social media than ignoring it.
That's helpful. And then Heidi, anything you'd add to this conversation?
I would just say, well, different opinion than Pierre, but social media has been the key for getting the word out, and the community is out there. And I find that there are different audiences for the different platforms. For example, Chris had initially really encouraged me to get a Twitter account. And I thought, I'm just struggling with Facebook, but okay. And the science community is on that forum on Twitter 24/7. And that's how we were able to get the medical community engaged in this as well. So there's definitely a benefit for me. It's been worth learning how to communicate on these different boards and platforms. So again, it's also putting myself out there all the time, but it's like, once I made the decision, I personally jumped in with both feet. And so willing to be out there. And again, there's a range of advocacy. There is, from talking to people, telling them about your cancer story, getting that on people's radar that, can be susceptible to any cancer, and learning to advocate for themselves, to the far end of it, where, Pierre and I are juggling pretty much many aspects of advocacy. You don't have to do that. I mean, it all has an impact.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we're completely aligned. I don't want to be misunderstood. I think social media is incredibly powerful. And I think particularly for our own type of advocacy, that's what has, I think, made it the most powerful. And so I'm saying I'm the one who needs to adjust to that and become more involved in it and become more comfortable, because I think social media, as others have said, I think is an incredible tool for advocacy. But one has to be and take steps to learn how to use it appropriately. So we're in alignment, Heidi.
I think this is wonderful. We've touched on so many great things here. I just want to recap a couple of the high points here and then wrap up very quickly. But I would say I love the idea of moving at your own pace, like Ryan was talking about, right? There's a time for things. There's a time to heal. There's a time to work on other things. There's a time perhaps to be an advocate. And I think not putting pressure on yourself for it to be anything other than what's right for you in a moment. I think that's wonderful advice. I love the idea of starting small, like Dorothy was talking about, right? So just taking a small step can lead to other things. It might not. It might lead to a small step or another few small steps. Again, removing that judgment and just thinking about what might feel good. Maybe I'll do a tiny thing and maybe I'll never do anything again. That's totally okay, right? But I think having the courage or having the ambition to take that small step could be a wonderful way just to try things out. I also love the idea of beginning with what already exists and not reinventing the wheel. There's so many great groups that are doing work. That's another really good way to take small steps. And then certainly I think finding partners, finding people to go along the journey with you, whether it's in those organizations or a friend just saying, hey, I want to do this thing, will you come along with me, or a partner, or whoever else it is. I think there's lots of people who are looking for opportunities to give back. So this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your stories. And to the folks in the audience, thank you so much for making time and listening to all of us. Hopefully you're inspired. But again, I think there's really no right or wrong answer. It's about figuring out what works for you and when the right time, if ever, is to take a small step. So thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Pierre and Heidi and Dorothy and Ryan, for sharing your experiences. And this is a great session. We could go on and on for this. We could do this another 3 hours, but we really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your experience. And so when this Zoom ends, just from the grit side, I wanted to let you know that please go back to GVCC21.com and log in. And from that homepage, you will find a button that says Happening Now, and that will take you into the next session. So thank you all for joining us. Thanks to the panel. You guys were awesome and great to see my friends, and hope you guys have a great day.